What is going on, guys? Happy Wednesday. Today I have the one and only Paul from Neptune on. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderful, thanks. Thank you for coming on.
hmm
So, there has been a few new product releases, so I figured it'd be a fun one to kind of dig into with you today. So,
Yeah.
so I guess first and foremost, we have the DOS Quiet Drive. Now, I always love things that are silent, and I have a slight OCD about it, so it's a nice little upgrade to the DOS, which
hmm
definitely pretty stoked. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I
So,
kind of go for it.
Devin, I'm happy to be here. I
Yeah.
love doing the ReefDudes live streams. They're always lots of fun, and I start thinking about things that I didn't think about in a certain way beforehand, and getting customer input, the talks and chats and all that. So feel
Mhm.
free to chat us up, ask the questions. Definitely want to answer them, and what I can answer, and we'll go from there with it. But yeah, we released, we not released, we announced two new
Mhm.
products, and we did it in a really fun sort of way, I thought.
Yeah, the teaser.
I think, did you see the trailers and everything?
I did. I did. I
Yeah, yeah.
did. I'm
Go ahead.
curious. How many people figured out what it was right away?
I mean, on the first one, not many people,
Yeah.
right? I think that there were the people that, we started talking to our dealers and things like that,
Hmm.
like getting them on the inside track. I think some of them may have spoiled the party just a little bit. But the
Hmm.
first one was supposed to be one of those things that after you saw it, you're supposed to be like, what did I just see? Right,
Yeah.
and you were, and hopefully I help a lot of people felt like that. I like when advertisers do that to me, or
Hmm.
companies do that to me, in the sense of, because it really gets me sort of excited and gets my wheels turning on what things could be.
Yeah.
Then we did the next trailer, and I think that there were a couple intentional giveaways to people who
Hmm.
really knew what to look for.
Yeah.
The visor shine, for example,
Hmm.
came through in that second trailer. So I think a lot of people at that point knew that we were getting very close to something Trident related, right?
Yeah.
Or something, that was in the Trident form. And then finally, I was just super stoked when we got to release the final release video, which
Hmm.
showed both new products standing side by side. You had that at the beginning of the live stream, the images of those, and that's the DOS QD, or the DOS Quiet Drive, if
Yeah.
you're going to be proper, first name, last name, middle name, DOS Quiet Drive, and then the Trident MP. And I
Nice.
think that it will affectionately be called the MP. By a lot of folks. There's the Trident, which does alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and this
Mhm.
is the next product in the line of Trident, the Trident
Yep.
NP, that will test nitrates and phosphates.
Now it's funny because out of the years, whenever we've done Neptune streams, there's been a bazillion times I've seen one's nitrate and phosphates, one's a nutrient tester coming.
Mhm.
So I mean that's definitely something that's been asked for quite a while now. So she
Yeah.
finally made it.
Yes, yes, it was. It- you know, the most interesting part about it, and the part that I can talk least about, that makes the Trident MP so that long runway on it, was the chemistry involved.
Yeah.
The chemistry is really something to give our customers a reagent kit, right, that they can use on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Just like they use with their Tridents, and they can test, a single time a day, multiple times a day, and maybe even less than once a day. We'll
Yep.
see. The jury's
Nice.
still out on that. But so that's why we're doing we're in the testing phase right now.
Yeah.
We've been in that phase for quite some time. But when you're testing these things, it's really about how long do the reagents last, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. You beat me to one of the
yeah,
questions. I was going to ask,
yeah,
like, what is the shelf life?
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, and how fast do we have to use them?
Hmm.
And you can't just do it once. It has to be done multiple times. So, if we're
Yep.
going to say a pack of reagents lasts longer than that period of time, or less than that period of time, and still provide the level of accuracy and precision we're aiming to get to,
Mhm.
well, then that means that that means that you need a lot of time to test it. And so, fortunately, we
Yep.
have been in that phase, and we are continuing to go in that phase and expanding that phase.
Mhm.
That's some of the most exciting parts about this, right?
No, that is.
Um,
So
yeah.
I guess during the testing phase, how long can the reagent essentially be exposed to oxygen and air
Mhm.
and still get accurate results is going to determine, how, frequent or spaced out tests can be at the end of the day, right?
It's ultimately what we found with the Trident too,
Yeah.
right? We did
Mhm.
all sorts of edge case testing and everything like that. We
Mhm.
found that 2 months was really what kept us in this accuracy and precision that we were aiming for, right?
Yeah.
So it became the 2 month kit.
Yeah.
Right now, we are aiming for a 2 month kit again. It will be at least 2 months, right? And possibly more, possibly
Mhm.
less, but not less. It would be 2 months. But there's a
Yeah.
slim chance, that they could be more than that. But with
Nice.
that being said, once you crack these bottles, they start getting exposed,
Yeah.
right? And reactions start to occur. You may have your Hannah, and once you basically test that open those reagents once, those reagents immediately begin a process where they're not going to produce as accurate results as they did prior to that, right?
Mhm.
And that's the case with anything that you
Yeah.
open. When I open a gallon of milk, right? I know how soon I have to drink it. Whereas
Mhm.
if it was just to stay in the fridge, it's gonna stay longer, right?
This
Unopened.
is a ridiculous but maybe plausible idea has popped into my head. What if you had
Mhm.
like a little cartridge full of soda lime pellets surrounding it that sucked out any CO2? I guess the
Well, I
oxygen would
mean,
still get in there. It,
CO2 is one thing that can react.
yeah,
Oxygen can react.
yeah,
Nitrogen can
everything
react.
can. Yeah,
All of these gases that
scrap that.
are in the air, right,
Mhm.
can react and do react.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the cool things about we take that into consideration, right, and make sure
Mhm.
that the promise of monitoring your nitrates and phosphates at a regular interval with a regular level of precision and accuracy
Yeah.
is repeatable, right?
Yeah. Makes
Repeatability. And
sense.
so you get all of these sorts of insights because of that, because other errors are not coming in,
Mhm.
other errors that would
Yeah.
decrease precision or accuracy.
So I guess this is another good question. So with these new tools, with the ability, to know how your nitrates and phosphates, changing throughout the day or day to
Hmm.
day, like what kind of stuff do you see people using this for? Again, like it could affect how much you feed your tank or how
Yeah,
much, if you're doing something like no pox or some kind of reduction thing that could
right.
affect how much you dose of it. Like there's lots of cool things that shouldn't have popped in my head, but like what's a lot of the really cool benefits that you see?
So I think that one of the interesting things about Trident was we came to understand how our alkalinity, calcium, magnesium was consumed in the tank, right?
Yeah.
There was always this notion that maybe you dose more alkalinity at night, because
Mhm.
that helps keep your pH up. Uh, we found out that was pretty not true, right?
Mhm.
Alkalinity consumption basically went down to nothing during the night.
Yeah.
And so I changed my dosing as a result of that.
Mhm.
Before I had done an even dose. So I'm using that analogy here that the same thing can start to be applied when we're talking about nutrients, right?
Mhm.
So why do nutrients accumulate in your aquarium? There's many reasons for this, but the number one reason is feeding,
Mhm.
right? And so some foods, right, you'll find, and none of us are, I'll use the word disciplined enough to basically be able to, feed a food and then,
Mhm.
test at regular intervals after feeding that food, right?
Yeah.
And and so you'll find out that some of your foods maybe are cleaner than others, right?
Oh, for sure.
You'll find out that sometimes that knowing how much to feed,
Mhm.
right? I think that that's a really thing that you and I now take for granted, right?
Yeah.
I know how much food to put in my aquarium. And I think that in the application of feeding, it's a real gut feeling that you sort of learn of, well, when I fed that too much, it created algae,
Mhm.
right? Or when I fed too much, my fish got sick. Or when I didn't feed enough, right? That's when my fish started looking emaciated, or my corals, stop looking as good.
Or if you
Um,
have lots of tangs, you usually if you too skip you on the feeding, they can be more aggressive, right? So it's like finding that
yeah,
balance.
and so now you have an those are all subjective measurements
Yeah.
nutrition, right?
Mhm.
Now you would have a really objective measurement of that, right?
Mhm.
Of I know when my nitrates get below this ppm that
Mhm.
either things stop looking as good, or my nitrates get above this ppm, things start looking like this, and you can start to tune not only your feeding to that, but you can
Hmm.
tune the other things that you do in your aquarium, i.e. water changes,
Yeah.
i.e. changing out your media reactor
Hmm.
filtration, right? I.e. changing out your filter sock, right? There's all of a sudden
That's actually
there's
good points.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
there's all these things that we just kind of do possibly at regular intervals without a lot of reason, right?
Yeah.
We just know that I do that every 2 weeks and that
Hmm.
works for me. But we don't have any objective data other than what we observe in our tank, right? And
That's
now
true.
you have these things that necessarily reduce nitrates and phosphates,
Yep.
right? Water changes, filtration
Hmm.
media, filter sock. You have all these things that reduce that, and now you can see
Yep.
that in an objective way,
Yeah. You're like,
right?
oh,
So
the GF.
you start timing that stuff now as a result of what those measurements are,
Yep.
right?
No, no, that's true. There's a lot of really good things. Like, oh, GFO is exhausted. Oh, the socks,
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been changed in a while. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
the skimmer's all gummed up and it's not pulling what it should because it's full of nastiness and the bubbles aren't going out, flowing out nicely, right? As
Or I mean, if your skimmer cup overflows,
Yeah.
whether if you don't have a skimmer locker or something like that on it, you're going to know about that pretty quickly now.
Yep. It's true.
Within the testing frequency that and when that happens, I'm just like, oh God, I forgot to empty my skimmer. The skimmer went on the fritz, and I actually don't know why, or the I don't actually know how detrimental that is to my tank. Now you'll be like,
Now you'll
oh,
find out.
look, my nitrates jumped by 20 because I jumped a bunch of sewage into my aquarium. You know, so
There's lots of things like, if a coral STMs or something happens, you might be able to correlate stuff a little better now
yes.
too, which is kind of interesting.
Well, and it's that relationship to nitrates and phosphates.
Yeah.
So we all know that if your nitrates stay constant, but your phosphates bottom out, that's not a good thing,
Yeah.
right? You want those two to go and work together, right? They
Hmm.
always want to be in a ratio. Now, the ratio itself, we could argue about until we're blue in the face, right? Some
Yeah.
people will say, well, it needs to be 3 to 1. Some people will say it needs to be 4 to 1. Some people say it needs to be 1 to 1. I'm not going to get into that.
Hmm.
But there is definitely a ratio that you want your nitrates to be at this level and your phosphates to be at this level. And
Yeah.
now I think we're going to time coral mortality in a more
Hmm.
effective and objective way if we have consistent nutrient readings,
Yeah.
that we can tie in with that.
Well, I think another thing is too, is you'll be able to know, was there a big swing? Did something happen? Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times there's an issue you test, but there could have been something that happened beforehand where you don't necessarily know because you didn't test it. If there was some
Mm-hmm.
big swing or big change. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
and I mean this the same thing can be said for alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, right? Sometimes your alk just all of a sudden will go up for some reason, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of, if you just keep dosing at your normal level, bad things are going to happen, or it bottoms out,
Yeah.
right? Like your CO2, for example, you use a calcium reactor meter in your CO2 tank,
Yeah.
basically empties out.
Mhm.
You get that sort of insight before you would have never really known that that's even starting to happen. I
Yeah.
think the same things are going to start to be applied with nutrient monitoring, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just, oh, I want to test what my nutrients are. That's not where the benefit is. The benefit is I want to test my nutrients at a regular interval. And that regular interval, I can turn up or turn down, right? At
Yeah.
least once a day is kind of where we're aiming. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm not going to get into that because we're still testing stuff, but at least once a day we're going to be testing this.
Yeah.
And as a result of that testing, you're going to gain insight that you necessarily didn't do before.
Yeah.
And then you're going to adjust, and then it's going to
Mhm.
become a regular thing. And you'll be like, well, why do I do this? And then something crazy will happen. You'll be like, man, I'm really glad I'm regularly testing this.
Yeah. In the chat, can I detect a large turtle snail death? I mean, likely depends
So
on your water
I can
volume.
I can share some data if you want to see. We're actually, we're in real tanks right now. So before I
Mhm.
do share that data, what are the other applications, right?
Yeah.
So there are two other applications. We talked about ways that behavior that we do, water
Mhm.
changes, filter socks, feeding,
Yeah.
right? But then there are also additives that we dose or reducers that we dose. Okay. So
Mhm.
one of those additives, right, can be, you're actually, dosing nitrates and phosphates into your aquarium. These are typically very low nutrient systems
Yeah.
that you have a lot of filtration with. I think this is a small percentage of customers
Mhm.
compared to the grand scheme of customers, but it's
Yep.
a section of customers that those, when we see some tanks, sometimes these are the ones who are doing these NeoVit systems and things like that, Zeovit
Well,
systems.
another consideration, a lot of people I know that, more like grow and sell coral, they're
Mm-hmm.
constantly fighting because that coral load just sucks up nitrogen phosphate. So they're constantly dosing nitrates and certain
Yeah,
things to their tank.
exactly.
So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for them, I think that'd be like a huge thing, right? Because then they could just automate on a doser based off the levels to basically pin it wherever they want it.
And so you do that regular test, and then just like with Trident controlled dosing, push on the gas, press on the brakes. We're probably going to, because of the alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, we want those all to be very tight, right?
Yeah.
With nutrients, you may have to let those be a little wider. So some of the questions in the task are going to allow you to be like, well, what's the highest phosphate you would ever want? What's
Yeah.
the lowest phosphate you'd ever want? So we know how far to push on the gas, and then obviously there will be limits to that as well, so it doesn't go crazy. But now, instead of how do we typically dose these things? Boom. Or we just have them on a doser and we're not really monitoring it. As consumption increases, right, we'll push on the gas. As consumption decreases, we'll push on the brakes.
So basically try to control dosing capabilities based off the nitrate phosphate test.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So you get those sort of benefits now when you are talking about doing additives and things like that. Then you have reducers, and some of these reducers are the NOPOX that you mentioned, I think, at the very beginning here. It's really just this kind of it works. I don't know how it works, but I mean, there's the chemistry on that is very interesting. But wouldn't it be great to dose that at a consistent volume and rate? To constantly be kind of driving those down, so you're not basically doing big swings of dosing with that. And that's something that the Trident controlled dosing will be able to help with.
Speaking
hold
of,
on, I just got to do a disclaimer.
Okay.
Don't put NOPOX in your DDR. It's alcohol based.
Okay.
Alcohol and acrylic do not mix. There's a big note when you open your DDR. It says don't put alcohol in here. You will what you call craze acrylic when you do that.
Well, no vodka dosing out of the.
No vodka dosing in the DDR either. When back in the day when we were, youngsters, and we would do. I don't remember. You remember the margarita machines with the dose? We would do those, but we would ruin DDRs doing that knowingly. So. But anyways, you had an ooh, and I had to do the disclaimer first.
No, that's fair. You're okay. So we're talking about continuous dosing. So a couple questions I want to dig into with the dose quiet drive, because one of the features that said it could do continuous dosing.
Yes.
So aside from just being quiet, which is a wonderful upgrade if you're going to buy a dose anyways.
But let's actually stop on the quiet for a second. It's much
like how much? How much?
So why is it quiet drive? It's quiet drive because the synergy of all of our engineering teams coming together, which I've talked about before, is another great example of that. I don't know if you remember what the old original Vortex sounded like. You knew if somebody was running Vortex because you would hear them in the background when you walked in. It wasn't obtrusive like, say, a dose running at 250 milliliters a minute, but it was a noise that you could hear. And it really kind of took away from the aesthetics. The dose is interesting because it only runs ever so often, right? So it's not as obtrusive as a result of that. But for people that were doing automatic water changes at high rates, and people with very sensitive hearing, I mean, you could hear the boom, the hum of that motor every time it ran. Well, enter the great friends from Pennsylvania, Ecotech Marine, and those great engineers who we're using some really interesting driver technology and driver code. We have now incorporated that same quiet drive technology into the dose for the dose quiet drive. Okay, so how much quieter is it? At the lower speeds, you're talking almost a 200% reduction. So in the marketing material, we use the word whisper soft. Okay, and that's exactly what it is. A whisper is about 40 decibels or so.
Mm,
And that's about how loud the motor is at the lower speeds.
nice.
Okay. And then at the higher speeds, we're talking an even bigger reduction in noise. So at the higher speeds, we're talking almost a little over 400% reduction in noise volume. What does
Beautiful.
that mean? Yeah, that's a whole lot quieter.
Yep.
So you're talking going, not much over, not much over 50 dB on that, or less. I think it's less than that
That's huge.
actually. I have the
Yeah.
data right here. Hold on.
Yeah. The original one for dosing, I mean, not nothing, but like automatic water change, that baby hummed.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes. So you were near 60 decibels on the old one, and on the new
Yeah.
one, you are below 50.
Nice.
A great reduction, and that's only at the
Solid.
highest speed.
Yeah.
You are, and I misspoke earlier, you are below 40 decibels on the lower speeds,
Hmm.
and just in the mid 40s at the higher speeds.
No,
So
that's awesome.
pretty quiet, yeah.
Okay, so question in the chat. Can you use it to pull calcium reactors? So I guess
So
pull through, push through.
great question. So the continuous duty function
Hmm.
of the DOS quiet drive. So because now we are driving that motor more efficiently with that technology,
Hmm.
we are able to now run that motor at a cooler temperature as well. Okay, and
Nice.
the real reason why there was not continuous duty on the DOS was because of concerns of overheating, right?
Hmm.
And so it had a 33% duty cycle, which meant that if you took, 10 minutes, it would only
Yep.
run about 3.5 minutes of that. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, or 15 minutes would be a better name, with 5 minutes would be a better example.
Yeah.
Now, at the slower speeds, which we are dubbing the quiet zone,
Hmm.
it can dose at a rate of a continuous rate. And so basically any speed below 60 milliliters a minute can now continuously have dosing.
Nice.
And then in the middle range, I believe you are at a 50% duty cycle, right?
Nice.
So running pretty frequently there. And at the high end, we're still keeping that fairly low for safety, but we
Yeah.
may open that up later.
So
But
what you're
go ahead.
saying is I could run my calcium reactor with this and
Well,
have it auto tune itself based off the Trident
you
results.
you could. It's really the
Yeah.
volume though that you're dosing
Yeah.
through. Okay, so the volume there, you were able to do at the, let's say, 60 milliliters a minute. You were able to do roughly about 7 gallons a day
Yeah.
in the old way. Now you can do up to about 12 gallons per day,
Okay.
right?
Nice.
Continuous movement of the heads and things like that. Uh, and so for small calcium reactors, that should fit the bill.
Yep.
For big calcium reactors, we really do need those faster speeds to be open. That may be something that we look into offering in the future, a
Yep.
continuous duty solution at the 125 and 250 milliliter. But at launch here, we are staying put at the 60 milliliters a minute for the
Okay.
continuous duty feature.
I mean, that's still pretty good for the average tank. Like most of
Yeah.
mine's, 45 mils a minute type of thing. So I mean, that would probably
Yeah,
work.
yeah. And it's
Or
mostly, and it's not a heat concern. It's
yeah,
more of the head concern at those high speeds,
yeah.
continuous duty.
No,
And the only way we can really know that is by continued long-term
testing.
testing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. But calc reactors, like there's lots of cool, more potential uses now, which I like.
Yeah, I mean, there were people that ran calcium reactors with a dose in the past,
Mhm.
and it definitely works. Now, this does open up a new avenue for them to be able to run that at slower speeds now,
Yeah,
in a very similar fashion. And what that would probably look like is, probably running at a fast pace, maybe at the 125 milliliter minute point for 10 minutes, and then stop for 5 minutes, 10
yeah,
minutes, 5 minutes, that
yeah. It's
sort of
not
thing.
bad at all, though.
So, yeah.
Um, is it possible to do a single manual dose with the dose?
So like I want to dose 30, 40 milliliters.
Yeah, like just like a
That sort of
correction
thing.
dose.
Right. So that's not a feature that we have at this time, but
Mhm.
that's something that's on our wish list right now. So that's something you'll probably see again as we continually improve the experience. You'll probably see that as a feature at some point in the future.
Well, one day there'll be a task for that, a correction dose.
Um, I would hope that it's just a button,
That'd work
but
too.
you never know.
Yeah.
The same task that you're familiar with on DOS now, or you're going to see now, there's going to be a little probably video input in them as well.
Yeah.
to help you with the installation of it. So you install it, you calibrate it, and then you
Hmm.
do Trident controlled dosing with it, you do additive dosing with it, or you do automatic water changes with
Nice.
it.
Not
So
gonna lie, I'm excited to try automatic water change with it. Um,
yeah.
so okay, good question, Farm Frags. What's the smallest dose it can do? So what's its accuracy, I guess, or the tiny minute? How low can we
So
go?
it's 7 milliliters a minute is the slowest, and you could do a single drop, and so that's zero
Yeah,
point 0.1 milliliter.
0.1 mil. So you could use it for
Mhm.
trace elements if you wanted, just very
Yeah.
minor, minute stuff.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do. Now, okay, so I have a random scenario slash question for you that I thought of earlier.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, can you schedule different functions? Because I know you can do, if I want to say, do a water change while my tank's in feed mode, could I say take out a gallon and then add a gallon? Would that work with it?
Take out a gallon and add a gallon. So describe to
This
me what you're looking to accomplish.
this is a thought that I had.
Okay.
If I for like, because I know you could do daily automatic water changes, and
Hmm.
normally every time I do it, I always take out and add at the same time, so it doesn't mess with my ATO or anything else. But I
Hmm.
was thinking, what if I was to do it well in feed mode? So I've put my tank in feed mode for about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And during that time, I'm not really worried about the ATO and other stuff because it's in feed mode. So I was like, oh, could I theoretically do like, suck out a gallon and add a gallon back within my sump? So it's getting in a water change every time I feed my tank without,
Yeah.
messing with levels and anything else.
Shouldn't be any problem at
Yeah.
all. So the way that you would want to do that is you would want to use the manual water change task in Apex Fusion.
Hmm.
That does both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
But what you would do is the trigger function for that is actually a feed cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you would do is you would take that statement that triggers it, the feed cycle, and you
Hmm.
would just make either your feed cycle do that, or for your first removal pump.
Yeah.
And then on your addition pump, you just delay that by 45 minutes.
Oh, that's a good
So it
point.
does that part. So it's still the single button of your
Yeah.
feed cycle, your virtual
Yeah.
outlet, whatever you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
And so whatever the trigger is, the feed cycle and virtual outlet will kind of be the thing that kind of kicks that off, more or
Okay.
less. Does that
Oh,
make sense?
that's easier than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people talk like, "Oh my gosh, this Apex is all this programming and coding, coding, coding."
I like that aspect.
I know you like it, right? So it's sort of the big bad wolf coding, right? I don't think any of those people that really fall back on that coding thing of like, would you really want that? A, yes, a lot of people
Hmm.
want it, and B, very few things in the Apex world today to unlock your basic levels of functionality require any coding at all. That's what
Yeah.
a task is for,
Hmm.
and you just type in the search bar exactly what you're looking to do, water change, and guess what? Three
Yeah.
things will pop up to you in terms of doing that. So nothing to be concerned about there.
Easy peasy. Oh, okay.
Easy peasy.
So since we're on the dose, and I know it's coming up pretty dang soon, when's the actual release date?
Soon, very
How soon?
soon.
How soon?
Um, I mean,
Days,
so
weeks,
if it were
months?
me and I was like, I really needed a new dose,
Yeah.
okay, and they got this new dose quiet drive out, or I've been thinking about a doser,
Hmm.
at least according to our internal sales, right, of what we do within our brands. Nothing really compares to sales that the dose has, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it is by far it is far apart from any other product on the market in terms of sales that go in the Aperture family of companies, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I can speak to.
Hmm.
So other dosers that are on the market, aren't even in the conversation when you start talking about it,
Hmm.
and so it's the most popular dose in that context.
Yeah.
And in that context as well, now you have a dose that is quieter. It has some other quality of life
Yeah.
improvements with it. Now it includes a one link cable rather than like a power supply, so you don't have to
Yeah.
manage another outlet or something like that.
Hmm.
It has new buttons as well.
Yeah.
The buttons on it are silicone buttons on the priming now that kind of light up. They look very
Hmm.
nice. And then it has a new look to it, right?
Yeah.
As you've seen over the past couple of releases with us, we've been moving to this darker gray look.
I
right?
do like that better,
Um,
actually.
yes,
It,
yes. I mean,
it, yeah.
I think it fits better with the
Mhm.
aesthetics that our customers are looking for.
Mhm.
And so this darker look just really just kind of sneaks up on you in
Yeah.
terms of how much you'll end up liking it. And so I
Mhm.
think more products that you see us release is going to keep going in this darker sort of format with that nice contrast to the
Yeah.
orange.
I dig it.
So
The orange looks way better with the dark beside it. Like, not
yeah,
that it affects the functionality, but just aesthetically, I think it looks good.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a new aesthetic appearance.
Mhm.
For those that want it to match all of their other stuff, um, no, like we're not going to re-release the plastics on the older things at this time. It's
Yeah.
you'll have a darker thing with the lighter thing, but I think you'll see more products as we continue to release go in that direction.
Nice. Good.
Um,
Good.
yeah, I like it too. And so if you're on the shelf for that, go to our Facebook page. Be sure to like it and follow us because maybe the release date's tomorrow. Maybe the release date is next week. Maybe the release date is a week or two after that. I mean, it's very soon. So
I accept soon.
it's yes.
Yeah.
So I can tell you we are really excited to get there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's all of our dealers are very excited. The demand has
Mhm.
been beyond far surpassed what we expected it to be. So we're just getting everything in line to make sure that everyone is a happy person.
No, that's awesome. Okay. So dose very, very, very soon. Trident NP. How
I
soon?
I
Very soon.
also I also will put
Same
that in the
answer.
very soon category.
Yeah.
The response to this, I think I've in a couple of live streams, I've always been like, I don't know if people really want that, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if they really want nitrates and phosphates. Well, the demand that we've seen so far
Mhm.
indicates to me that that is something they definitely want.
Oh, they
In
do.
terms of,
Every time I've done a
and
Neptune stream, that's been a question in the chat.
yes,
Every single
so
one for the last like two or 3 years. So that's definitely
uh,
been on the wish list.
So it's coming in that context.
Yeah.
I think that you'll see it as well very soon. I think that there was some mention of dates in the teaser videos or
Yeah.
release videos. I suggest you go back to those videos maybe to get a little hint here.
Hmm.
But everything's moving along very nicely.
Nice.
As I said, both of these products are out in testers' hands, right?
Hmm.
They are using them and having great results with it. I can share some of that data if we want to take a
Yeah.
look at it. Some of the cool things that shows it's working. Even at the show this weekend, the Trident MP was monitoring nutrients in that tank,
Hmm.
and it kind of did what we expected it to do. A new tank has no nutrients build up yet, right? We know
Yeah.
how the nitrogen cycle works. So Sunday they started dosing things and putting phosphates and nitrates in that, and just as you would expect,
Yeah.
the MP picked up on that
Yeah.
immediately.
Nice.
So
That's cool.
um, yeah, on that, I'll go ahead and just share some of how that looks a little bit in terms of the responsiveness. So I'll share a little bit on the fusion side if
Hey,
now's
sounds
good
good.
for you. That's not what I wanted. This is
Uh,
what I wanted. I got it.
so
I got it.
you got it. You got
Go
it.
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Other question from CJ. How many reagents does the NP have, and will the
Let's
wastewater need any extra care?
let's go ahead and jump into that question
Okay.
once we are a little bit further along. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, so here is the nitrate phosphate graph. Okay.
Hmm.
And you can see here, essentially what he's been doing is going very slow on his feedings,
Yeah.
right? He basically wanted to make sure that he wasn't adding a bunch of stuff that would create some. So what we would expect to see in this situation here is that would have a slow draw. And so he starts off at about 11.7 ppms, right?
Hmm.
And after a couple of days of very light feeding, he's almost down to no nutrients.
Yeah.
So now what this tester is doing is they're starting to essentially dose this, right?
Hmm.
Not dose this, they're starting to feed this. So what the next couple of days we do expect this to continually rise. Now phosphates, we went ahead and played with those because we knew we couldn't let his phosphates sort of bottom out, right?
Hmm.
So you'll see basically right here, um, you know, uh, that these start to basically bump up here. Okay,
Hmm.
you'll see a 222, 222. That's in ppb, right? So don't worry, we're going to give you reported parts per million at the final release, but that gives us a little bit easier handling right now as we kind of are going in on those precision accuracy tests and things like that.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with a decimal number as well. That
Hmm.
can get a little that can get a little sticky, being 0.01 ppm and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Where our measured, so a lot of these measurements are in ppb right now
Okay.
in terms of the testing. And right here,
Hmm.
he did a dose, and guess what? Phosphates jumped. Guess what?
Nice.
He did more phosphates, and they jumped, basically exactly the amount of dosage that he was planning for as well,
Hmm.
right? So we can see how that works, how this is testing, this is working,
Yeah.
and we are seeing exactly what we would hope exactly what you hope you would see. And it's in the same. So getting into CJ's question, we'll talk a little bit about form factor and things like that.
Hmm.
So why doesn't this have a new form factor compared to the old Trident? Well, we solved a lot of things in the old Trident that took a long time for that Trident to come out. So changing that form factor, it could introduce new variables that we didn't necessarily anticipate.
Hmm.
Secondly, that is a completely self-contained situation, right? The
Yeah.
only thing you have there is the waste and the sample line, and the
Hmm.
one link cable coming into it. You don't have any other cables, any other
Yeah.
wires, anything else you have to worry about,
Hmm.
because it is all self-contained within. Could we have
Yeah.
made it rectangular so you could have stacked it? Sure, but
Yeah.
where's the fun in that? And I think that the Trident is one of those things that should have presence, right?
Hmm.
I think people get interested in this hobby for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people will see your aquarium and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing," and they get really into the fish, they get really into
Hmm.
the corals, all this sort of thing. Some people see equipment and say, "Oh my gosh, tell me about this." And the Trident is one of those things that you can't not notice, right?
Yeah.
It has presence,
Hmm.
and we decided to stick with that presence for the MP as well, you
Okay.
know. And That's what I'll say about the form factor. But if anyone has any thoughts on that, so
Okay. How other couple questions. How many reagents and how many tests can one get from the
great.
reagents?
So there are 3 reagent bottles, just like with the
Yep.
Trident, that are going to go inside the unit, okay, on the MP. There is a mixing process that is used before you put those reagents in, okay?
Hmm.
So you have a small bottle that you add contents of to another larger bottle, right? And
Yep.
then that larger bottle is what then goes inside the Trident.
Okay.
This is largely for shelf life reasons.
Hmm.
If we had merged those two things and then they got put on a hot plane or ground transport or something like that, or they
Hmm.
froze, bad things would happen, and you would not get a shelf life that anyone would think is acceptable. So the shelf life on that is exactly what the shelf life of the Trident reagents. So you get that 18 months that you get
Yeah.
with the Trident reagents because
Nice.
of that mixing process. So the 3 bottles go inside, and then
Hmm.
there is an additional bottle, and that bottle is going to be added to the waste container.
Hmm.
Basically, that waste that comes in, we want to make sure that it's not acidic in any ways. So it just basically neutralizes the solution as it comes into the aquarium, as it goes into your waste container and things like that. Um,
What
so
is there any issues if you do your waistline direct to the drain?
So good question. As I said,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to do that. Some of is a little bit more
Mm.
acidic than the basic nature that comes out
Mm.
of the on the Trident. So
Yeah.
just to make sure that we're not going to be causing you any home plumbing issues. Waste container will be where we go with that.
All right. Fair
So.
enough.
Mhm.
Well, I have one that goes direct to the drain, so just checking.
Yeah, so you can use a single waste container for
Yeah.
both Trident and MP. That's no problem. So you can put the waste of the two of them together. That's just fine, right? Um,
Mm.
so you can. That's not an issue. The MP, it wouldn't be advisable to do it that way. So we
No,
want to use a waste.
noted.
We want to use a waste container with that.
All right. Noted.
Mhm.
Perfect. Sparkly, thanks for the super chat.
Yay! Nice super chat
Yay.
too.
Much appreciated. So what's the cost going to be relative on the reagents? Any
I
guesstimation,
mean, we're
approximation,
still
similar?
finalizing the final cost
Yep.
on these things. I wouldn't expect it to be demonstratively different than the Trident reagents, right?
Yep.
We're aiming for that 2-month kit, right? So you'll
Hmm.
get 2 months with the kit, and same for the Trident is too. I wouldn't expect it to be much different than what the current Trident is. There are
Yep.
physical component differences between the two of them.
Hmm.
Um, we may harmonize those over time, so they all just use one thing. But there are some physical
Yep.
differences between the two of them. I'm not going to go into
That'll be.
and show my hand here. You'll see it when those come out. When it comes out with this.
Yeah, we're eventually going to need the Trident complete kit with all the 5 different reagents for both testers.
Yeah, that is definitely something to consider there.
Yep.
2 6-month kits. Just the 6-month kits. Very popular, right? You get a little bit
Yeah.
of a discount buying all of them together. So the plan is to have both of those available. Maybe not all of it's available at launch, but you will see just the regular parts of that. Reagent, just like with the Trident, sans COVID and a couple other little hiccups here
Hmm.
and there, reagents almost always in stock. So
Yep.
we don't expect to see any difference in that regards.
Yep.
So that's what I will say about all of that. Any other questions? Did that bring up any other questions, you think?
Let me
I
just
don't think we
quick.
talked about the DOS QD price.
No, we haven't.
Just about,
Actually, we
just
haven't
about,
talked about any prices yet. So reagent,
yeah.
similar ballpark to the Trident. Do
Yeah.
we have a
Uh,
ballpark price for the dose and
It
for the
may,
NP?
like I said, these aren't finalized yet. They may be a
Yeah.
little bit more. Don't think they'll be less. They may be a little bit more based on some final things we're ironing out.
Hmm.
But on the so Trident reagents and the dose QD, expect a very similar price to the dose. So
Okay.
you're getting a lot. You're getting that continuous duty, the silence, one link included, all very close to what the dose was, or the same price.
Yep. Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
I am that was one part that I was very happy
yeah.
about,
Yep.
So and I know that people have been looking for doses for quite a while. It's been a little bit low on stock. We wanted to make sure that everyone that nobody had just was in that situation of I just bought a dose, right? So dose has been a little bit less in stock recently, and that's one of the big reasons why. So
So is the old dose going away? Is it going to be?
yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
no reason to continue
That's what I figured.
pushing that. I mean, you're gonna have a price point that's very similar. You
Yeah.
have a feature point that's very similar, but you're gonna get a lot more features on the quiet
Hmm.
drive compared to the original.
Yeah. Makes
So
sense.
yeah, it makes sense to doesn't make sense for those to be there though. Now, is the original Trident going away? No, right?
Hmm.
And so I've seen some people asking, well, how come you just don't make one thing that does them all? I've seen that out there. Well, a lot of people would already, have a Trident. I mean, like a lot of people already have a Trident.
Hmm.
So, and when you build these sort of things, right, at least when you first go with it, you kind of have to go with one edition. If you do multiples of it, then guess what? That's going to drive up the price of both of them, right? So you focus on one thing that's probably going to solve a lot of people's need, which is to add phosphates and nitrates, right,
Hmm.
to their existing tridents.
Yeah.
And so, would there be something in the future that has everything? Maybe, right? But right now, right, the best value to our customers is to fulfill a need
Hmm.
that they need, which is phosphates and nitrates. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily to offer them Trident alkalinity, calcium, magnesium again, so to speak.
Well,
In a single unit.
exactly, right? And you're always going to have someone 50-50 on that one. Because if you don't have
Hmm.
any, then yeah, you're going to want one that does both ideally. But if you have one, you're like, why would I buy
Right,
a
but
second one that tests the
at,
same
at,
things I already have?
at the
So,
same time too,
yeah.
right? If pricing works out well, these two are the same price as this one,
Hmm.
right? Then it's 2 dozen, and it's a half dozen, I always mess these sort of things up, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Can you use the Trident MP without the Trident that tests elk? Yeah, they're completely
yeah,
separate things. So
completely
100%.
separate. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're not looking for alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and you're just looking for nutrients, MP is going to be your answer. If you're looking for all of them, both of them are your answer. If you're looking for just alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, Trident's your answer.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
Hmm.
good to have options.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you answered my super simple programming question, which I'm totally going to try in the future. So that's nice and easy. So yeah, so hopefully be out in a few weeks. If there's any other main questions on the
Yeah,
NP or the DOS QD, let me know. I've probably
scrolling
missed them
through.
as always.
I'm scrolling through
Yeah.
the fun right now to see if we missed anything.
Any calibration standards? Will it come with a similar thing to calibrate it like the Trident
Yeah,
does?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So the calibration is definitely part of it.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different than the Trident in the sense that the Trident you just has the values on the outside. This is going to be always a known value,
Okay.
right? So it's more of a standard, and then we calibrate to that standard, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just saltwater or something like that. Will you be able to adjust the values like you can with the Trident? Possibly, right?
Mhm.
So some people, think that my HANA says this and the Trident says this. Well, then just put in what your HANA is. Will
Yeah.
you be able to do those things? There'll probably be an offset thing there. What we're
Mhm.
still working through testing, and right now we're pretty much matching the handheld testers and things
Yep.
like that. So there's not really much of a need to do that. Might we do that though anyways? We'll see, because some people will
Mhm.
use Salifert. And I think one thing that we totally didn't get into, Devin, is,
But
well, how is this better than manually testing? What do you think some of the ways that this is better?
well, you don't have to manually test.
Okay, so
You're not going to
time,
forget to test. You know,
right?
you're not going to have human error. There's a
Laziness,
bazillion
right? And
reasons.
yeah, so it's really that
Millions.
human error part, right?
Yeah.
On and I'm going to use the HANA because it's a great handheld tester, right?
Hmm.
But you have to follow the directions very closely to get repeatability. Okay, which means if you do something slightly different, or you don't get all of the powder out of that pouch, right? All the
Hmm.
things that are very easy to do, or you have a slight fingerprint on the cuvette, right?
Yeah.
You have all of these situations. Literally, it's you didn't shake, the vial vigorously enough, right?
Hmm.
So one thing that we've seen very interesting, if you kind of haphazardly just shake the vial, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm shaking, I'm shaking, I'm shaking. You'll get a significantly different number, right?
Hmm.
And I encourage people out there to see this for themselves. Vigorously shake, like I'm saying, like to your hand almost falls off for the entire time, or just kind of lackadaisically shake it, and then
Yeah.
measure the same water twice, and you'll see that, like, oh wow, these are different numbers.
Well, the biggest thing that I always think of too is right. If you're doing a drop, or like if I think of like the Hannah elk, for instance, is the plunger exactly at 1 mil? Did I take out
Hmm.
exactly 10 mils of tank water? Probably not. There's always a deviation
Right,
from
and
manually
so
testing.
that's a great point too. When you're using those syringes and things like that,
Mhm.
they only have a level of accuracy that they could possibly offer, right? Which
Mhm.
isn't all, which isn't a whole heck of a lot, right? They can be off by a couple drops.
Yep.
Alkalinity, it doesn't so much matter,
Yeah.
right? But when you're starting to get into these really low ranges, like we are detecting really low ranges of phosphate here, right?
Mhm.
Parts per billion, sort of numbers, in the hundredth decimal places for
Oh,
parts per million. Go ahead.
super random thought.
Oh,
What
you're
is
right.
the accuracy and range of the phosphate nitrate? Since we're talking about that, I don't think we touched on that
Yes,
yet.
yes. So that's a great question. One that I am not going to show my cards for just yet.
Yeah.
Right. That's something that as we get closer to launch, you're going to see more information coming about that.
Okay.
Those kind of things. I think that's we want to make sure that hey, where we think we are, we really are at, and the only way
Mhm.
that we can really do that is continued testing. right? So we've been testing for months and months. We're going to continue testing. We're going to continue to open up that testing to more testers, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we get there, so getting more insiders involved in that process. And I think that you'll see us really kind of narrow in as we get closer to that.
Nice.
So I think you'll
to
be
be
I think you'll be very pleased with what you see. So.
Yep. I think so too. How is it powered? Can it be piggyback powered from the Trident?
Good question. No. So the power on a Trident can only come from one of two places. One of those places is from a one-link port on an EB832 or a one-link port on a one-link module. It's nice too because one-link is both a communication and a power standard.
Yep.
Right, so it provides both of it with one cable. You don't need a separate power supply and an Aquabus cable. It's one of those things. The other alternative option is you have a Trident that's one linked, okay? Then you have an Aquabus to the second Trident, okay? And then you have a power supply into the second Trident. Does that make sense? So EB832, one link to Trident, and then Aquabus to MP, power supply to MP.
Yeah, you still need power supply then though.
The option, so basically a requirement for the installation is having an available one link port on EB832 or a one link module. If you do not have that, that's just fine. You can get a one link module if that's the direction you want to go for and minimize power supplies, or you can get the optional Aquabus and power supply for it, right? So we did this from the Trident from the get-go, right? Trident always had the one link cable. Because the EB832 was out in the US when the Trident was released. The DOS came out before the EB832, so it always came with a power supply. Now, because the EB832 is out there, the DOS QD comes with a one-link cable. Finally, like great example is the European, or not the European, the international Trident, which also includes Europe. But the international Trident includes a power supply and Aquabus cable. Why is that? It's because the EB632, the product that standard brought one link to our international customers, was not yet released at the point that the international Trident came out. So we included a power supply with that. There's now only one version of the Trident. The international and the domestic one are exactly the same, and they include a one link cable.
Nice.
Sorry, long-winded answer to probably a simple question.
Worldwide answers. We covered the basis on that one.
Yeah.
Yep. CJ, this is not a bad idea. Can you control an auto feeder based off of it? Could you adjust how many rounds of pellets come out based off your nutrients?
Ooh. You could. That would be a really interesting application. I think that if you're talking about this kind of feeding, I think it's probably best done with a liquid feeder, and that's something that the DOS Quiet Drive excels in, liquid food feeding. And so that's probably a better application than the pellets, right? The pellets in themselves are always very variable what comes out, right? If you were to spin an AFS 20 times, you're probably within 10 plus or minus 10 pellets each spin, but a different amount is going to be dispensed each time.
That's my one day. I actually want to get into some. I know like NIOS and some of them, they do make like a liquid semi-preserved mysis. It'd be like that on like vacation mode would be very nice to have this automated.
It is. So like the copepods and the a lot of the new Reef Nutrition stuff. You just get one of the little tiny
mini fridges,
freezers, mini fridges. Like I'm talking like the $20-$30 one. You drill a hole in the top of it to run tubing through. You run it out, you push it back. You run it out, you push it back. And there's a whole how-to video on how to do that done by me many years ago with much less gray hair. That's out there that would still hold entirely true for the Quiet Drive as well.
Yeah.
So
perfect. Beauty. Okay, if I missed your question that's directly related, re-ask and we will hit it up, but I think I got most of them. Uh,
Yeah.
with the Trident NP, since it tests 1 time a day, can you change the time that it tests?
Yes,
Assuming it's in the
absolutely.
evening. Okay.
So that was one thing on the Trident. You couldn't change the times that it tested, and maybe that'll
Hmm.
change in the future as well. But on this is the default is once per day, and it
Yep.
can be at any time of the day that you want it to do. Will you
Okay.
be able to
Nice.
do more? Very likely. We want to give you
Hmm.
absolutely the opportunity to test more, and sneaky sales guy, use
Yeah.
more reagent, right? But can you test less? Maybe, maybe not.
Yep.
We're still trying to figure that out.
To
we
be determined.
know we know
Hmm.
the 1 time a day is going to get you the 2 months in that
Yeah.
reagent pack. That is no problem at all.
Hmm. Yeah. Perfect. Unrelated. Are you able to emulate moon phases with the sky?
Yeah. Use the if moon. It's a different lunar channel, and so you can use the if moon command to be able to do that. It does not allow for you to control the color, though, right? The white or
Hmm.
blue, the level of white or blue in there.
Yeah.
So it's 50/50, I believe, on both of them.
Okay.
So.
Right. Ask Paul to get us the ability in Fusion to change our own background or have Neptune add more.
So that is available in the app currently. You
Really?
have the ability to choose 3 different backgrounds in there. Possibly you'll have the ability to do your own background in the future. That's
Hmm.
something that I've always been beating the drum, beating
Yeah.
something with a dead horse, and one of our developers feels very much in that same fashion. At this time, though, it's just those 3 backgrounds. You get the gray, you get kind of a pinkish one, and you get kind of a bluish one, all with like blurred out cool coral. So.
Oh, I didn't even know I could change a background.
You can change the background. You have to be
Just
in the beta version, quote unquote. We think it's
yeah.
just the new user interface on there, and you can go to settings, and there's the ability to change background. There's also the ability to add bubbles. There's an Easter egg
Hmm.
for bubbles there as well.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, my one Devin's wish list on a computer, if you could add more columns one day, would be nice
Yes,
for nice big wide screens.
I would also appreciate that. The three
Yep.
columns, though, is a tenant of the fusion.
Yep.
Maybe something in the future, does
Hmm.
something different. So.
No. Do. One iron briefer. I'm guessing the Trident NP will have controlled dosing like the normal one. Sure does. So I'd be able to use it to dose lanthium to control my phosphates. Absolutely.
Yes,
100%.
absolutely. And I think that lanthium is one of those kind of those scary reducers. You can have
Hmm.
really detrimental outcomes if it's not done correctly.
Yeah.
And the MP will be a great resource to you. I think that you'll probably want to be able to bump up the testing there, as that's a feature that we hope to be able to add
Hmm.
and be able to really tune that in as you drop lanthium into your aquarium.
Yep. No, definitely. Well, I think we got most of them. Spent about an hour, so I won't keep you too late. But yeah, I think
Cool.
that was a good one, Paul.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the excitement here. I was not at the show, and you weren't at the show, but I saw lots of people having lots of fun at the
Oh, I
show,
know. That's sad.
Reefapalooza last weekend. And in particular, the feedback that we got at the show was just absolutely stellar.
Hmm.
People are very excited about this, and I know we can't get it out soon enough. So soon, very soon, just continue to, if you don't like our Facebook page already, be sure to do that, and you will be the first to know when it does become available.
Well, I
So
think we can't wait for new fun tech toys to automate our
cool.
reef.
Yeah,
All right, guys. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Paul, thank you for coming on. I definitely appreciate it.
absolutely. Yeah, I
Step.
think as we get closer to releases too, maybe we'll be back on and I can show off some more features on them and things like that. So
Mhm. No, definitely. Shelly, Sparkly, thank you guys very much for super chats. Much appreciated. If you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button. Make sure you're following the Neptune page to figure out when the goods are actually coming out and when soon really is. And if you're new, subscribe. And yeah, thanks guys for hanging out. We'll catch you on the next live stream.
thanks everyone.
Thanks.